Well, welcome to January 1st. As I told you all, we are going to get started on these book reviews. We are going to start having book clubs, and we are going to do the work to help heal our trauma, to help heal our misfortune, to help heal our bodies, our minds, our souls as people, as women, as Black women, and as a country, hopefully, along with other countries to join in. So, the book that we are starting with this year, the very first book is You Are Your Best Thing by Tarana Burke and Brene Brown. And I'll be honest, I haven't jumped into full research on them, so we are going to do that today. So let's just start. I'm just going to pull up a quick Google review of both of these authors so that you can hear what they are about. So we'll start with Tarana Burke, and then I'm going to dive into why I chose this book, because I was going to go a different route, and I decided very fully and wholeheartedly that this needed to be the book. So just a brief synopsis. It says Tarana Burke is an American activist from New York City who started the Me Too movement in 2006. Burke began Me Too as a youth program for junior and high school students with the goal of addressing the rampant sexual violence in the community, which makes sense because she's talked to a lot of other people from different ethnicities, different backgrounds. India and China specifically was mentioned in the book, where she met some other women that were doing the work to help sexual abuse and violence toward women in their countries as well. And so then we'll go to Brene Brown. Cassandra Brene Brown is an American academic and podcaster who is the Huffington Foundation Brene Brown Endowed Chair at the University of Houston's Graduate College of Social Work and a visiting professor in management at the McCombs School of Business in the University of Texas at Austin. Brown is known for her work on shame, vulnerability, and leadership, and for her widely viewed 2010 TED Talk. She has written 6 #1 New York Times best-selling books and hosted 2 podcasts on Spotify. So we learn about these 2 authors, and one is a Black woman and one is a white woman who has come together to write essays from different authors and artists with broad spectrums and backgrounds, male and female, to digest our African American lived experiences, vulnerability, as we talked about, and shame, making sure that we understand not only generational curses or plagues, right, but also how from generation to generation we carry on systemic abuse and systemic racism, and how that plays out into our everyday stories and lives. But it also reaches and intersects, because what I have learned in my journey, and they talk about it in this book in the beginning when they talk about the introduction, they want you to know love. And so it was great to know that Tarana Burke has read a lot of Bell Hook books, because I've been reading her over the past year. I've read about 3 of her books over the past year, and about love, and about how love means that we are intentional to understand people's lived experiences. We are intentional to understand their purpose and their stories and their journey and how they got to where they're going, because what we find out is that even though we came to the same lesson a different way, our stories may be different, but the lesson learned is the same, right? And where does it intersect? Because in a lot of these stories, I've talked to some of my friends who are going to do the book review with me at the end of the month, and they have experienced some of the same lessons for different reasons. Some very, very similar, some different. I know chapter 3 was probably my favorite one, and the one that I am probably going to resonate with the most out of all of them. And while our experiences were very different, the realization and the lessons that we came to were very much the same. And so each story is meant to unfold something great about humanity, about the African American culture, about shame and vulnerability and neglect, abuse, all of those things. But we can respect other people's lived experiences a lot more. I'll say this from the African American perspective, it seems like we can respect other people's hardships. We can respect other people's stories. We can respect other people's backgrounds and how they got to where they are. But sometimes when we speak about ours, it's as if it doesn't matter. It's as if it's a problem. It's as if we stand up for ourselves and we fight with purpose, then we're being problematic. And that's just not okay. It's time out for that. But as we go and dive deeper, we find out that there's so many people that we intersect with. And that is where we start to live with purpose and where we operate. And Brene talked about that in the introduction, that when we can lead with empathy and love and gratitude, it carries us so much further. Because yes, there is a place where we have to have logic and reason and a sound mind, and we just operate with those matter-of-fact points. But there is also a place where we can exist as well, and it overlaps and intersects, that we have love and patience and understanding and all of those good things guiding us. And it's funny because I talked to a friend about when you go into this space of social media and you're talking your lived experiences and your truth, how do you share it, right? Because some people will tell you, stick to the facts. You're rambling, you're going on, you're going too much into your personal experience, and people don't want that. But one of the things that I love she said when I went back and read the introduction is that our stories matter. Our personal experience is what helps us to resonate with people. It brings our personality to the forefront. It gives and leads empathy to your situation, or joy for your situation, whatever the story it is that you're telling. But we do also have to recognize that even those stories, while we tell them, we need to tell them from the perspective. I'm adding this. She didn't say this in the book. She said in the book that our lived experiences help to carry us a step further. And that when we talk and when we speak, we should speak from our lived experiences, because it brings texture to the conversation and it brings knowledge and wisdom, right? But I'm going to add that when we tell these stories, we have to tell the stories from a place of learned experience. And what did you learn? Are you just telling the story to harp or to bash somebody else, or are you telling the story so that truth and knowledge come to be known, and so that we grow, and that we can see through all these different multifaceted lenses that lead us ultimately back to love? And ultimately, love is the primary part of the Bible that I read, that we choose to resonate with, that love is one of the most important things. He says, love me and then love your neighbor as you love thyself. And self-love is very critical, because self-love helps you to make sure that you can love your neighbor the way you love yourself. And you can't love your neighbor very well if you don't possess that same love for yourself very well. So that leads us to the very first story. And so chapter 1 is called Between Us, A Reckoning with My Mother by Jayson Reynols. So let's look up Jayson Reynols. I looked up some of the work that he's done, and he actually wrote the novel for Miles Morales. So when we look at Spider-Man, he has, I think, 2, maybe 3. I see 3. Yeah, about 3 books that were based on Miles Morales and Marvel. But he's had some other books. And so when we look at him, he is a popular artist. He's a #1 New York Times bestselling author of many award-winning books, including Look Both Ways, A Tale Told in 10 Blocks, and All American Boys. And what resonated with me, I said this in one of my posts, is that I'm trying to find authors that my son can resonate with, because he doesn't like reading as much as I would like him to, and I'm trying to draw him in. But we all know that takes authors that we can relate to. That's why our lived experience is important, because we all come from different backgrounds. We all come from different walks of life. And when we have the same type of authors, we don't have somebody that we can relate to. We don't have someone that shares our lived experience or our circumstances or anything like that. And so he is a great author for young boys, early age men, where you can relate to his material and enjoy and find somebody that you can digest easily. So let me go to my notes, because I feel like even though this was a very short chapter, it was loaded. So we understand that he is a little boy. It starts out him being a little boy, and he has a mother and a brother. His parents are divorced, and his mom is a single mom. And quite often they take the trip from DC back to South Carolina in order to visit his grandfather, which is, I forgot his name. You know, I don't think they ever really give us his grandfather's name. Well, we know John Wesley in January, which is his great-grandfather, and January is his great-great-grandfather. And so they take these trips back and forth to visit his grandfather in South Carolina. And over the course of time, his grandfather, it starts out, they're visiting his grandfather because he has had infection in his body and he had to get his leg amputated. So they're going back and forth to visit him, and eventually they lose the great-great-grandfather, and they lose the grandfather. My apologies. They lose the grandfather, but we learn the history of the great-great-grandfather, and we learn the history of the great-grandfather, which matters in this story a little bit. And eventually, over time, he loses both of them, and he lands on his mother getting sick with cancer. And he has to travel back and forth to see his mother as he starts his college journey. So this is his introduction to manhood. He's kind of thrown into this act of responsibility and juggling it all at a very young age of 22. So he's having to go to school and take coursework and still come back to the hospital and spend time with his mother, check on her, all those things. His mother gets better. He graduates, and he's off to New York in order to start his career. And he finally gets his first publishing opportunity, and he gets the opportunity to sign to join his first publishing company. And all at the same time, his mother has ended up back in the hospital with sickness due to all the surgeries. And he's got a choice to make, a very tough choice to make. And he goes to visit his mother, but the day that she happens to have her surgery is on the same exact day that he's got to sign for the publishing company. And he chooses to go to his book signing. He chooses to show up for her, but he doesn't stay throughout the whole surgery. He shows up, sends her his well wishes, and he goes back to his book signing, and that's kind of how it ends. But there were a couple things. So, well, quite a few things. So follow along with me. One, the grandfather has a nasty infection that's spreading in his body, and he travels to see him in North Carolina. That's kind of the start of the story, and it just speaks to sickness is sickness, right? We can tend to feel like we have it more as Black people because of our DNA, our makeup, the generational food that we've been given, even when we look back in slave time. So we are more prone to have high blood pressure, diabetes, all of those things, high cholesterol. It also has to do with our stress levels because we have lived a more stressful life. So that kind of stood out to me. But they traveled to see him in South Carolina. And that was prevalent to me because I believe the first slaves came into Virginia. But we know that around the 18th century, many slaves were brought in to South Carolina. And I think that plays a small factor as we move on. But he specifically wrote that his great-great-grandfather was the oak tree of the family. And that stands out to me because my great-grandmother was the oak tree of our family. And to be honest, my grandmother was a smaller oak tree of our family. And I would say if if I be honest, actually saying that out loud right now, my grandmother was probably the bigger oak tree than my great grandmother. My grandmother had 5 daughters, and um, she passed early on in her life due to illness. She was in her mid 50s when she passed. And when we lost her, our family dynamic just wasn't the same. The girls, the aunts, we didn't get together the same way that we used to. I think that's when people started moving and separating. It was a little bit before her death that we had all kind of separated, but we didn't come back the same way after she passed. But my great great grandmother was my oak tree. I mean, she really was just the source of what this man stood for and how he helped his family along the way. And so he acknowledges how difficult it was. He said in the book, his grandfather, he acknowledged how difficult it was for his mom the author, Jayson. He acknowledged how difficult it was for his mom as a single mother and his brother, making it problematic. So in the book, he mentions that as they go on these trips, as his brother gets older, his brother is just kind of problematic. He's going through adolescence. He's probably a little angry. His attitude is kind of bad. He gets huffy with the mom a lot. And so he just kind of dampens the mood to the point where she sets rules, but she leaves them at home. So he doesn't deep dive into the issues with the brother, but we can tell that he's kind of problematic for her. Now, I don't know who will be following me. I'm assuming it's adults, but if I ever have kids, then just remember that your parents are going through things too. And we are talking about trauma, right? Across the board, all of these situations are traumatic experiences. Remember that trauma doesn't have to last forever. The effects and the remnants of it don't have to last forever when we face it, but trauma does exist. And if you're going through a traumatic experience in your adolescence, it helps you to talk about it. It helps you to learn how to navigate it. It helps you to understand that it exists so that you can understand mentally how to tackle it. But it's never okay to just be problematic to other people simply because you don't know how to figure it out. But we've all had our youth, and myself included. I've had poor attitude in the past, and I've had to grow from it. So as the parents, have grace. But her grace was just leaving him where he was. And I think sometimes, if I be honest, when my grandmother was sick and my mom was going back and forth, now there were some other factors at play from my perspective of the story, but I was a little, probably in hindsight, a lot problematic, but I wasn't getting in a whole lot of trouble or anything, but my mouth was crucial. And so he points out that his mom is a single mom, and he can see things through her lens. He can see the struggle that she's facing. He can see the problems and the loads and the burdens that she's carrying, and he's probably doing everything in his life to make that an easier feat for her. And so they ride down to South Carolina all the time. They stop for snacks. The mom talks to them, and he talks about how they play, the oldies music, and she doesn't understand how he knows all the words to these songs. Like most of us, we were singing songs that we didn't know the words to or even understand, right? But they made us feel good. They were warm to the heart and the soul. And so one of the notes on here is nostalgia and music. Remember that music helps to settle our soul. It helps to settle. It can aid in helping with traumatic experiences. Whenever you find your gifts and your passions, that's one thing. But there are still simple things that even we all resonate with music. The words can be meaningful to us. The sound, the melody can help calm or quiet us. And so just remember that nostalgia is key because it's a part of life. It's a part of that fun-heartedness that we need to look back on and embark and remember the memories from. But music is always a settling of the soul when you find the right music that resonates with you, just like the right books. That's why I love reading, but that's a different art form. This specifically spoke on music, and I wanted to make sure that when we sit around and have those dance parties, or when that song comes on that just touches our soul, or that gospel song comes on that we resonate with and pierces our spirit, Um, that is all working to help settle your soul. Be more grateful for it. So we go on, and as they're on these rides, his mother is talking to him about remembering his dreams and his purpose searching and meditation. This is specifically from the book, so I'm reading it directly. To remember and focus on his dreams and purpose searching, meditation and energy, live a grounded life, a centered life, and a life in flight all at the same time. Now, sometimes it can seem very difficult to juggle that all three, a grounded life, a centered life, and a life in flight all at the same time, because that means that even though we're grounded, even though we understand who we are, our purpose, we're centered, and we're focused on constantly moving forward. We're in flight, so we always have things in motion. We always have help in motion. We always have all these different things going simultaneously. And that is something that I had to learn along this journey. So even for myself, it was a matter of learning, how do I balance all of these things? But that takes knowing who you are. That takes understanding what being grounded means. That takes getting over and healing from the trauma in order for you to live a life that's in flight. And in flight is taking care of your own necessities, taking care of those around you, being involved in the community, making sure that you're working on your passions and your dreams and your goals, all of those things. She oftentimes felt like she could only have these conversations with him because specifically it said they felt her crystals and smudging as the antithesis to let me start over. They felt her crystals and smudging as the antithesis to conservative views on God. And I resonated with that so much because I teach yoga. And I've talked about this. I've had so many Christians slander me for teaching yoga, or tell me that I'm going to hell, or that God is not proud of me for the work that I'm doing. And it's furthest from the truth for me. And this is where you do need to be grounded, because yes, the Bible tells us what it tells us, but this is your own personal walk with life. This is your own personal journey with life. This is your own personal story with life. And we know that sometimes we can do a thing and people take it so far out of context that it blows your mind. To be honest, this just came in my mind today. Yesterday I went swimming with my friend. We didn't go swimming. I'm sorry. We went to mineral soaks. So we went to World Springs, and in posting the pictures and stuff, I posted my picture with my swimsuit because I am proud of where my body is now. I used to be extremely overweight. I'm proud with where I am now, and I'm comfortable in my skin. I felt sexy and confident as a woman, and it's okay for us to feel that way. But you have so many people. That same swimsuit I posted maybe 8 years ago when I first started losing the weight, and I had people tell me that I was thirst trapping and it was inappropriate, and because their husbands could see my Facebook post, it was out of line, when just like yesterday, those years ago, I felt comfortable and proud that I had lost the weight. I felt comfortable and proud that I could wear the swimsuit. I felt comfortable and proud that, I had made it that far. And so yesterday I was able to post it freely, without the hindrance, without the state of mind. At the time that I posted it originally, I was married. And so I went back and took it down, but nothing about me ever felt comfortable about taking it down because I felt comfortable to post it. I took it down for other people. And so when she talks about this, her crystals and her smudging, now that's not something that I do, but I don't have any judgment for people who do. What I understand about crystals is that they do have energy. Is that energy more powerful than God? Not in my opinion, but they do hold energy. And if in the sun, they can absorb more energy in order for them to be effective. Science would show us that, because the right crystal, the right size, the right amount of energy could spark electricity. It could spark something to start, right? And so therein lies the energy. Now, like I said, is that energy more powerful than God? No, but we have energy running all through our body. So if a crystal does have the energy from God, it's not that somebody is necessarily looking at the crystal to possess the power. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. That's their walk. But I can tell you, for some people, they are still looking to God to use a tool that He's naturally given us in order to help balance the energy in our body, because we have energy. And if good energy meets good energy, then we're restored, we're purified, we're empowered to move on, and we resonate with one another. Now, we're trying to train the body in order for that good energy to meet one another, so that we are the good energy, that our hands possess the good energy, that our works possess the good energy, fueled, in my opinion, by Christ. But even if not, we all have good works that could be done. We all have good spirits that we're trying to shed to the world. We see, when we find that we have more in common than in apart, we understand other people's lived stories and experiences, like I said in the beginning. So, moving on, the history. So they get to this land. Let me find that part in the book. So there's so much history in the land, and there's also a name change. So they talk about the history of the family, and they talk about the fact that the great-great-grandfather, eventually he gets an inheritance of this land. And they don't know where the land came from. They believe that the land came from the slave owners who had him. So that's a loaded thing. There's so much in history. When we pay homage to history, when we understand history, that is how we pay respect to our ancestors. According to my Bible, you let the dead rest. You let their spirits be where they be. But I've heard people say, I've heard very solid Christians, I've heard people from other religious backgrounds say that they had dreams, or that until they were settled, that person would appear in their dreams. And you can't take anybody's lived experience away from them. You can't take their dreams away from them. God can speak to you through dreams. So just remember that as you go on your journey. But the history is primarily understanding the history, having knowledge of it, and learning how you carry it forth with you is how you pay homage to those people that lived before you, and you carry their legacy on. That is how they still live. My great-grandmother, I look back quite often, I won't say daily, but very, very, very often, to the tools that she has given me. And now that I'm starting to have a much better relationship with my mom, and we can start having those type of conversations, I still hear the legacy and the tools and the knowledge and the wisdom and the love and the joy that she has given our family, that is still carrying on till this day, even though she's gone. But it says the name change, that he changed his name to January once he was a freed man. Now, they don't go into depth about why he picked January, but this stood out to me because sometimes we'll fault people for changing their name. You're not appreciative of what God gave you. You don't appreciate what we've instilled in you, and you don't appreciate the parents that picked the name that you were given. Well, names have meaning, and sometimes parents are sick or they're facing their own trauma, and this comes up again later in the book. The name change thing comes up again and later in the book, but in some of the other books that I've read, name changes are they're a form of grounding, they're awakening, they're empowerment, they're a part of the lived journey to say that you've been enlightened. Why? Because again, names are powerful. Some people feel like their names were given to them under poor treatment or conditions. They may not like the name, but when you reach freedom, we know in the Bible what Saul became Paul, right? I don't remember all of them, so don't knock me. But a lot of the disciples, their name was changed when they got to Jesus, because there was a newness in them. And so the name change just stood out to me. I'm not telling you go change your name. I'm not telling you that at all. But I'm telling you, don't knock somebody else if that's their journey to legally change their name, because enlightenment can come with some things such as a name change, so that you feel that difference moving forward in your life and you set a profound tone to who you have become. Not the new you or the new, well, yeah, the new you, the washed you, the cleansed you, the purified you, the mentally sound you that is not stuck in burden. That name change is critical. And then inheritance. So I wrote this down. I got a chapter, or I'm sorry, a scripture that I'll get to. But remember, I talked about the inheritance of the land, because he inherited the land. They feel like it came from their slave owners. That wasn't confirmed, but with that in mind, I put this scripture, Colossians 3:22 through 24. Bondservants, obey in all things your masters according to the flesh, not with eye service as men pleasers, but in sincerity of heart, fearing God. And whatever you do, do it heartily as to the Lord and not to men, knowing that from the, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the reward of the inheritance, for you serve the Lord Christ. I'm going to read that one more time. Bondservants, obey in all things your masters according to the flesh, not with eye service as men pleasers, but in sincerity of heart, fearing God. And whatever you do, do it heartily as to the Lord and not to men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the reward of the inheritance, for you serve the Lord. I felt like this was critical because, no, we don't want to go back to a time of slavery, but this has to do with more than that. This has to do with your jobs. This has to do with your managers. This has to do with even if you have a role in a volunteer organization, or if you have a role in your child's school, or if you have a role in the community, there's still typically always someone above you. And therefore, you pay respect to that person out of respect to the Lord, out of respect to the fact that it's another human, out of the respect to the fact that that person has been granted the responsibility of being in charge. How they handle their job is not on you. How you handle your job is on you. How you handle your respect to them is on you. How you show up and serve as a leader is on you. The other part is not on you. Now, if they ask you to do something that's totally out of character, yes, you can address it, but are you still addressing it with love and respect? And it just would make me believe that his great-great-grandfather had that type of mindset to inherit. And it lets us know that all our circumstances may not be the greatest. They may not be the most uplifting. They may be grueling circumstances. They may be difficult circumstances. But when you do the work unto the Lord, if you call it the universe, if you call it Buddha, if you call it Allah, when you do the work to the best of your ability, when you do the work with a joyous heart, when you do the work knowing that your good work leads to legacy, it leads to a sturdy foundation for somebody else that may be watching you. It may lead to good things for the people that are under you, because at some point you have become a leader. Then it leads to reward. And we don't know specifically that it came from those people, but I just believe that it did. And in this lesson, just know that there is reward in your obedience, in your good service, in your good deeds. And on the land, he built a home. So as we move on, we learn that once he inherited this land, he built a home on this land. And that is critical, because the land and the home are both critical. We know that land is important. We know that land is one of the biggest wealth building tools in the United States. And if you have land, then you have something very, very, very powerful. not only in terms of economics, in terms of money, but also in terms of produce and giving back to you bountifully, because it goes on to say that he tilled the soil and planted vegetables and fruit trees. So we know that when we are able to work with the land works with us. The land to grow plants, you see my plants over there, to grow plants, to do yard work, to understand how to till the land, to understand how to grow gardens and vegetables, and like it said, fruit trees. That is the land producing something back to you. Now, it is made so that we have to work the land, but I think even in that punishment of working the land, so to speak, it was a blessing in disguise, because when you work the land, you see the fruits of your labor come to pass. One, you see that the land is going to take care of you, which is a sign that God is going to take care of you. He's going to provide. There's always a way. Is there hard work in that? Yes, but there's hard work in life in order to get to the next level of life. But it's always going to produce something back for you, and you can look over it at the end and be proud of what you have accomplished with the power of the Spirit that lies in you, what you have accomplished that your soul has worked for and earned, right? It gives you so much, but it also teaches you patience. It also teaches you endurance. It also teaches you mentally how to slow down and focus on something other than you, because you have to learn the soil. You have to learn what the conditions of the soil are and what's happening that could affect your harvest and all of those things. All those things play out mentally that can help you along your journey in life. But remember, he built a home in the land, because as you all know, I am about to lose my job. I didn't say this in the beginning, but small plug here. Please like, share, and follow, because I am working hard to make this my path in life, to make this my way in life. But I have worked at a mortgage company for over 13 years now. And I've been at this company 13 years, but prior to that, I was still in the mortgage industry. So I've been in the mortgage industry for almost 20 years. And home ownership in the Black community is stifled at times. It has been made difficult to obtain. But if you can obtain it, hold on to it, value it, appreciate it, take it to heart, because it is a space for your family. It is a space for you to have wealth. It is a space for your children to thrive. It is a space for you to have peace of mind. It is your home, and that is very critical throughout life. And so even in the history of this, we understand that was important to him to build a home. And so we go a little further in the book, and we understand that that great-grandfather birthed a man named John Wesley, who adopted, the great-great-grandfather, his great-great-grandfather had a son, and that son's name was John Wesley, who became his great-grandfather. But he adopted his grandfather. Now, we don't get the name of his grandfather, but John Wesley adopted his grandfather. And so all of this legacy and this heritage that has been created throughout this family came through adoption. Now, I'm going to just throw in a plug here for my Christian community, because we've been adopted into a new way of life. We've been adopted into the newness of the Lord, and we've been adopted to live our lives freely and boldly as we see fit in conjunction with him. But even outside of that, this point stood out to me because I just told you all briefly a while ago about my great-grandmother. And she is my oak tree. She is my strong, solid foundation. But biologically, bloodline, she was not my original grandmother. My great-grandmother. My grandmother, her mother, rest in peace, had issues with substance. And my great-grandmother took her in, and she didn't let the lady come back and get her. She said, you got one time to come back and want to do this again. And she didn't allow it to happen again. And so the lady that I know as my great grandmother, like I said, biologically, bloodline, she is not my grandmother, but I reaped a harvest of reward from her because she had these same foundations, these same principles. And there's so much that she carried in her life that has been instilled in me that I've gotten through adoption. So know your history and know that even adoption means blessings and a reason to be grateful and have gratitude. So it says in 1955, they moved to DC for opportunities. I think DC was starting to have a railroad system that needed to be built, and the land was starting to dry up. And so they went to DC. But it says that later on, after the children were gone and they started making a way in life and they had jobs and kids of their own, they came back. And he did the work to retill the land and see the fruits of his labor come to pass again. So the reason those two things stood out to me is because while I think that he moved to DC for the opportunities for them, he did it also to better the lives of his children, because I think he still could have made the land work if it was just him and his wife. But this is what stood out to me that's critical now. Make sure that you are creating opportunities for your children to adapt to the way of life that is coming for them. And then once they're grown and gone, you can go back to your way of life. I really truly believe that not only did he leave for himself to advance his family, he left to go to the city so that his kids could keep up with the way of life that was coming for them. Because the land, while it could serve them, it was going to be a lot of hard work and it was going to be totally different. And I think he probably understood that. So make sure, like I said, that you are creating opportunities and space for your kids to be able to take advantage of what is going to benefit them in their life, because their life is going to be totally different than ours. We see technology moving so robustly and quickly, and so even our times are going to look different than their times, but it's still a difference that we need to teach them and educate them or expose them on how to adapt to it. But later it says that he went back to the land and he started growing his crops again and he brought it all back to life. And he had a tenderness about him, he says. It says that the book says he had a tenderness about him. He wasn't very emotional. He didn't give hugs and stuff a lot. You didn't need to touch him. But he would always be appreciative that the family came to visit him. He was always appreciative that they came to spend time with him. He was always thankful that he understood that they could be doing something else with their time besides coming to visit him, and he was grateful for that. And I lend an ear to that, because when you work the land and you till the land, you understand some things that should produce a gentleness about you, even if it's not a harsh gentleness, or a strict gentleness or a very evident gentleness. There should be a tenderness that you have and possess when you are working the land, because that's what it's about. It's about learning about something different and giving you patience and tenderness for something else. Moving on, it says that life hit hard juggling college and his mom's cancer. So I told you all in the beginning that now he is gone off to college. The grandfather has passed, the great-grandfather, all the history is gone, and it's just him and his mother. And life hit him hard trying to juggle college and his mom's cancer. That's where I told you, this is the part of the book where he said, I became a grown man at 22. Like, life got hard. And when he went back from the hospital to the dorm room, like between college, going to actual classes, and then going to the hospital and coming back to his dorm room. In his dorm room, if he wasn't studying or working or at the hospital, he was writing. And it says writing and music became his love of poetry, his passion and gift. So remember, I talked in the beginning about those gifts. Whatever your gift is, he we talked in the beginning about his mother telling him to never stop dreaming and reaching his goals, and those things are critical. I don't want to go against your parents. If your parents are telling you not to follow your dreams, you can't be a hopeless dreamer. You have to put action to it, and you have to also understand that sometimes your gifts may not in the moment be given to you the way that you want to. So let's say you want to be a celebrity music artist. Well, maybe that might not be the outcome, or maybe it's just a delayed outcome. But for right now, you have to do it in the church, or you have to do it as a music teacher with the students, or you have to do it in some other capacity. But if that's your passion, you may still have to have a job in the process. He still worked, but he found that writing and art and music again helped to settle his soul, and that was his passion that he knew he was going to go after, and it became writing. But it also came poetry, because I think he's a great poet as well. And so then we get to this point where his mom gets better, and now she's getting sick again, and he's got to make a choice. And it says he made a decision to go and leave to sign his first publishing deal. And it also says shame and forgiveness. His mother told him, well, I'm sorry, let me keep going. So he made the decision to leave, and his mother, she survived the surgery. At the time that he wrote this, I think he said that she was 75 years old. I want to say she was 75 at the time that he wrote this essay. So she far outlived the experience, and she told him in the beginning of the process, she said, I'm not going anywhere. I got to see you be successful, and I have to see what you become. And so her spirit knew that she wasn't going to allow herself to go anywhere, God willing, because she needed to see what her kids were going to be made of, and she needed to see the fruits of her labor come to pass. But years later, he is still carrying this guilt and this shame and this lack of forgiveness that he didn't stay with her during that time. And in life, sometimes you're going to have to make very critical decisions. I've had to make very critical decisions. And at some point, I did carry guilt about those decisions, or I kept going back on my decision because I felt guilt in the midst of it. But at some point, you understand that you have to make sound decisions for your own personal life. And sometimes those decisions may not be the best. They may not work out the way that you thought they would. It may be a failed lesson. It may have been a good lesson. In this situation, his mother was still okay, and he got the book deal, but he still struggled with his own level of forgiveness, because family has always been important in this family, and going to visit his grandfather and making sure that you showed up in the critical moments was very important to him. So the fact that he had to make a split decision in that moment left him with shame and a lack of forgiveness. And when he goes to his mom, in the midst of writing this essay, he sits back, he calls his mom, and he talks to her about the situation. And this is what she told him. Why be ashamed for what you've atoned for? When you have already, every day is a new day. From a spiritual perspective, from a Christian perspective, God grants forgiveness the minute you ask for it. If you keep beating yourself up, then sometimes we'll say, God was beating me up. God was beating me up. No, at some point you are beating yourself up. But every day is a day of forgiveness. So let's remember that on both sides. If somebody genuinely, sincerely, wholeheartedly can apologize to you with love and grace, we have to be able to accept it. But also, if they're not able to, that's their shortcoming. You don't have to make it yours. He made a sound decision. I think he might have felt like, what if? But what if didn't happen? So rejoice in the here and now. Rejoice that you can make a sound decision that led to the right thing and not the wrong thing, right? She didn't die. So your sound decision left where you showed up for your mom and you still accomplished your goals all at the same time. Sometimes when we start breaking off to start our own families, that has to be the case. We might have to make some sound decisions for our family that don't benefit the rest of the family, right? But shame and forgiveness is a big thing in our community, and for a number of reasons. This is a I don't want to call his story small. I don't want to say that, but to me, this is a small reason of shame and forgiveness that could show us the story, because I've read other books and I've heard other testimonies where it's such a bigger situation. But remember, this is from a man's perspective as well. So let's also remember the heart of a man, and to see the tender heart of a man, because this is a very genuine, tender hearted man in order to have shame around something like that. Because men are go-getters, they're driven, and we are too as women. I'm not taking anything away from this, but men, all they know to do is go get the bread, go work for it, go do it. And so a lot of men wouldn't even feel guilty about that. It's a decision they had to make. They made it. It's about their career, it's their money, it's their moving forward. Even if it's their mother, I'm not saying that they wouldn't have felt hurt by the decision that they had to make, but I don't think that they would have necessarily had shame around making the decision, and he did. So there's tender-heartedness still in our black men and in our community, and there's still a place of sincerity. And so that is chapter 1. I hope that you all like it. I hope that you all enjoy the experience. I have read ahead. Let me tell you, there are some more good stories to come. I know this was a little long, but that's how we're going to be, because we're deep diving into all these many aspects, all these lived experiences, all these stories, and we're understanding how we can carry their truth and their story into our lives to benefit our truth and our story. And so, again, I am losing my job. I'm not quite yet, but it's on the cusp. And I really want to be able to share with you all these books and to bring books to life for people. And like I said, I'm excited. There's every chapter is a different essay from a different person. So we're going to get to learn from all these people as I come across them. I'm starting to follow them on social media so that I can keep up more with their work. And after this, you can expect that hopefully, I got nothing but time now. I'm going to start giving you a yoga lesson after each one. And so in this lesson, when you get the yoga lesson, we'll be focusing on, all my yoga lessons are geared toward our mental health. And so what aspects did we learn that were crucial from this lesson? One, we learned about family. We learned about legacy. We learned about the earth. We learned how to give back to the earth and how the earth rewards us, beneficial to us. And we learned that we learn a lot from the earth. We learned that adoption is key, and there are other ways to adopt things, but how have you adopted somebody or taken somebody in under your wing to disciple them or lead them or guide them or help them or love them along their journey? And ultimately, this chapter is about love, but we also learn that we have to get rid of our shame and our worries and our fears and our doubts and our lack of forgiveness for ourselves and for others. And so when we dive into that yoga lesson, those are the things that we will be focusing on mentally in order to make sure that we're growing. Yoga is not about God per se to me. Is there spirituality encompassed in that? There is, but I teach from the perspective of mental health. And so how do we settle our bodies? How do we breathe in all these good lessons, and how do we exhale that shame? How do we exhale the lack of forgiveness? How do we exhale anger and hurt that helps us from giving legacy, right? Because sometimes we can't forgive people that have come and gone. They're already gone and you still haven't forgiven them. They are long gone and you still haven't forgiven them. But I promise you that every story, even in its ugliness and in its haste and in its disgruntledness, or its trauma that it's caused, has a lesson to learn that can benefit you. And as I said in the beginning, how are you telling these stories? We have to choose to see people through a lens of love. And that normally takes, even if we've been hurt, learning how to love something, right? In order to show a good light and shine good light into this world. So, this was my very first one. Let me know how you feel in the comments. I hope that you got a good lesson out of it, and I hope that you like, you share, you subscribe, and you follow, and constantly remember my motto. Until next time, we keep inhaling all that good life, we exhale death, and I'll see y'all on the flip side. Talk to you later. Keenan? I don't know how to stop it.
Yes, it's quite hard.
Oh. Oh, there we go. Now what are we?
That was an hour? I've been in here for an hour?
Yeah.
That was an hour?